Margaret's. And if you were planning to watch yesterday and you tuned in at this time to find there was nothing there, I'm really sorry. I got caught up with all kinds of things, including a trip out, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And it was a little bit late getting onto the system, so apologies for that. I've been thinking that actually we've been in this cooped up situation for quite some time. We don't get out much. There's the essential trips to go and click and collect with the shopping. There's the obligatory runs for education. But apart from that, it's the inside and these four walls. And on the times when we do get out, it's interesting to see how much of the world around us has changed. The traffic is not on the roads, the pedestrians are not on the pavements. And during one emergency shopping trip last week, though, I found myself confronted by signs of hope. I saw an elderly man being helped into a car. And as I got out and masked up and retrieved my shopping bag from the boot, I suddenly realised how unusual a sight that was. Someone well into their 80s being helped with mask and stick to get back into a car, having been, well, I didn't know where at that point. And it turned out that he had been to get his jab. It was one of the first of the vaccination centres open in our area. And as I walked up towards it, I could see a sight I haven't seen, well, obviously, since March, April, since we got into this lockdown business proper. Elderly people out and about. And I was really comforted by that. It was the first, I think, of the signs of hope that this thing isn't going to drag on and on into the future. And a sign that there'll come a point where what we now accept as normal, which is as different from the old normal as some of us can imagine, will be different again from the new normal when we come out of it. Signs of hope. And watching elderly people walking along the pavement, it was a real sign of hope. And yesterday there was another little sign of hope. I received a text message saying, would I like to go for a COVID test? Not the jab, and of course I'm nowhere near the age group that would be eligible for the jab yet. Nowhere near, I do stress that. But I was invited to have a COVID test, an asymptomatic one. And I thought, well, why not? So I booked it in, and that's the reason I wasn't here at 12 midday yesterday. And I went for a quick swab. Well, I thought it would be a quick swab. Actually, it's a little bit more involved in that because everybody there is suited up to the nines with PPE and trying to keep themselves, each other and us safe. But there it was, 10-15 seconds with the swab, and then out of the door with the assurance that the result would be on my mobile phone within half an hour. And it was negative. And I suddenly realised, actually, there are real now signs of hope and signs of change. That although the confinement we're currently experiencing is difficult, it's temporary. There's light at the end of the tunnel. There's hope at the end of all of this, that things will change in a way that is easier for us to cope. And that promise of hope and promise of change is something that actually is shot through the faith that we hold and we share. If you read the book of Psalms, you can't escape the fact that bits of it are pretty grim, and the psalmist is in a pretty poor way for some of it. But many of the Psalms end in a shout of praise, almost defiance, that God is God and God will be glorified. And so it is, I think, as we look round us. We are in situations which are not of our choosing and we don't really like and we're not well adapted to, and we're all just a bit frustrated with. But there are those signs of hope, those green shoots that suggest that the future is going to be different. And it is going to be different. And we hope it's going to be better. And what will help is if through these slightly darker days, we keep our eyes fixed on that hope and make plans for a future that with God's grace and help, we too will make better than the reality we currently experience, which, as all of our experience is only temporary. Thanks very much for joining us. We're back tonight for Tuesday Night Live at 7 o'clock, which is one of the last ones in its current format. And we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. And then night prayer is at 8 o'clock. And morning prayer tomorrow, 7:30. And our communion service is 9:30 from St Margaret's. Thanks very much for joining us. I hope to see you again soon.